What's up, Brooklyn Squad? It's your girl Jay, and I'm back at it again with another video. But today is different. Hey, Kathy B. Hold on, y'all. I hope everybody is having a blessed day today. So, we have been talking about the Adam Walsh case. If you're new, please join us because this is very, very interesting. This is a very, very sad case. I brought this case up to you guys a few months ago. Um, Adam Walsh was John Walsh's son from America's Most Wanted. And today we have a very frustrated witness who was in that same mall when he ran into, I'm not even gonna tell you who he ran into. I'm gonna let him tell you who he ran into. So I'm gonna need y'all to hit that like button, share this video, and if you haven't subscribed to my channel, now is your time. So I'm gonna give Willis Morgan the platform, and he got some things to say because he is not happy with the system at all. Hey, Willis, how are you?
Good.
You doing good today? Welcome to Brooklyn Squad Real Life Drama.
Thank you.
So, Willis, we're going to get right into it.
You
First,
ask the questions and I answer them. How's that?
all right. So, I've been talking to Willis for a little while now, and I was very shocked when you told me,
I don't know, my head's all messed up.
"Oh,
Go
you
ahead.
look good. You
Go
you
ahead.
so sexy. You
Go
look
ahead.
good." When he told me what had happened. So I was like, oh, I need him to come on here and tell y'all. First, let's get started. Willis, where are you originally from?
I'm from New York.
New York is
Long Island.
big.
Long
Huh?
Island. Long Island.
Oh, you're originally from Long Island. Okay. So what brought you so who did you run into in the mall?
Okay, well, I had an encounter with Jeffrey Dahmer on the same day, location, and time where Adam was abducted.
Jeffrey Dahmer. Can you tell everybody who Jeffrey Dahmer is? I mean,
Well,
I know, but some people might come in here and be like, huh?
right, right. Well, in 1981, I had no idea who he was. I didn't know who he was until 1991, until he was captured, because he never told me his name. And in 1991, when he made national news, that's when I realized that's the guy that I had that encounter with in the Hollywood Mall.
What did he say to you?
Well, it wasn't just what he said, it was his whole persona, his disheveled appearance with this dead dull look in his eyes
Oh,
while he was smiling and trying to initiate conversation with me. So it was everything. What he said was, he started off saying, hi there, nice day, isn't it? And it was just
hmm.
the whole encounter was bizarre. In fact, it was so bizarre that after he stomped out of the Radio Shack because I never responded to him, because my thinking was that if I say anything that would initiate more conversation, I didn't want to start a conversation with this guy. I figured he would just leave.
Right,
But it
right.
took a while for him to leave. In fact, he was at the entrance of Radio Shack when he first spoke to me, and then he came into the Radio Shack and came right up to me. And then that's when it got really bizarre. But in the end, he did stomp out of the Radio Shack. And my thinking at that time was that, he's going to approach somebody else because he appeared to be desperate to speak to somebody, to have somebody to talk to. So I knew that he would approach somebody, but my thinking was he would approach somebody my age. In 1981, never did I think a 6-year-old kid would be in trouble. So I was thinking he would go up to somebody, say something similar to what he said to me, and there may be words exchange, a shoving match, or a fight at the most. And that's why I was watching to see if that would
Mm.
happen. And I actually watched him, and I watched him walk into the Sears toy department. But my thinking was, when he didn't come out after about a minute, my thinking was that he's probably playing the video games, and I wasn't going to stand there while he's playing video games, so I just left and went home. And
Where was you? Go
go ahead.
ahead.
No, you
Where
go.
was you coming from before you went to the mall that day? Do you
Well,
remember?
yeah, no. Back in 1981, I was working for the Miami Herald, the largest newspaper in Florida, and we were working a 4-day work week, 40 hours a week, 10-hour shifts. And Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday were my days off, my 3 days off. So on Monday, July 27th, 1981, I decided to go to the Hollywood Mall to have lunch in a deli that was in that mall. It was a German deli. It was actually called the Hollywood Deli, but everybody affectionately called it the German Deli. And so that's where I was going to have lunch, but I never did go to lunch there because after that encounter, I just wanted to get out of there and go home. So I went home. And it was that same evening, that exact same evening, that I had the TV on in the living room, one of the local news stations, and I was in the kitchen making a sandwich. And I heard on the TV the Hollywood Mall. Then I heard about an abduction. They mentioned about a missing child. And then they said the toy department in the time of day. And right away I knew it had to be that guy because of that encounter I had and saw him walking into the toy department at that exact time. I knew it had to be that guy. I just didn't know who that guy was. Like I said, until 10 years later, to the week. So,
Kathy B wants to know, how old were you back then at that time?
okay, I was 34 at the time in 1981. And when I went to the police, obviously they asked me some pertinent questions, and descriptions of the guy.
Right.
And I told him that he was about 5'10" to 6 feet tall. He was about 20 years old. And they asked me if he had any kind of an accent. I didn't detect an accent of any kind. And so they wanted to know what the tag number was of the vehicle. And I explained to them this incident happened inside the mall, never happened outside. And then they wanted to know if I had a receipt to prove I was there. But like I said, I left the German deli. I never bought anything. And even if I had eaten at the German deli, I most likely would have not kept a receipt for that.
Right.
Back in those days, we didn't use credit cards. You paid cash, and that was it. But anyway, 10 years later, I would find out how close I was on that age because he was 21 in 1981. Jeffrey Dahmer was. That's how, because I did the math, because when he was caught, I figured out that he was 21 years old. And all the witnesses that were there also gave their descriptions, and all of them gave age ranges between 19, I think, was the youngest a witness said, and I think 24 was the oldest that a witness. So the age range that witnesses were given were between 19 and 24.
How was your did you did you get enough sleep the night before?
Oh, yeah. No, because Monday's my middle day off, as I said.
Right.
So
Right.
on Sunday, I would be going to sleep at night. When you work night shifts, you're always in perpetual jet lag, they say. But on your 3 days off, because I would revert back to day shift. And then when I would go to work, I would work nights because Miami Herald is a morning paper. It comes
Right.
out in the morning. So we're up all night printing it. I worked in the production end of the paper in the press room. I was a supervisor in the press room. And so, we spent all night printing the paper so everybody could have their paper in the morning. So, but on Monday, I would have been wide awake in the morning.
Right.
On
And the
day.
reason I asked that is because, people would say maybe he's exaggerating, maybe he was tired, maybe he thought he saw him, maybe he was intoxicated, maybe he was.
No, none of that. First of all, I don't drink. I don't smoke. Never did. And
I know
well,
that's
I'm not,
right.
I don't drink. I have a 6-pack of beer in my refrigerator, but that'll last me for 3 weeks.
Right.
I don't go back.
So, yeah, so he was sober when this happened. He wasn't seeing things.
Oh,
This was
I
Jeffrey
was sober.
Dahmer.
He was not sober. He was disheveled, and you
No,
could
you were sober. You wasn't
yes.
seeing things.
No,
Right.
no, 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 no,
Right.
no. Believe me,
This
once I heard about that on TV, that image of that encounter was embedded in my brain forever.
mm,
So, and the thing is, other witnesses also had the same similar experiences, and the memory was embedded in their memories as well. And they have proof to show that that was the guy they encountered too. Because the reason I say that is that they made composites. I never made a composite because they completely dismissed me when I went to the police. I felt like a jerk for even wasting my time going there. Uh,
yeah.
what happened is after they asked me for a receipt and I didn't have one, they simply brushed me off, saying that if we need you, we'll call you. Because of course they did take my information, but they've never called me. And like I said, other witnesses that made composites, I started seeing some of those composites showing up in the paper, and I knew whoever made those composites saw the same guy I saw because I didn't
Mm,
think I could make a better composite. And I'm sure you've seen some of those composites in my book.
yeah. And I'm
So
gonna show that. Yeah.
yeah, you can see the similarity,
You
and
could.
especially when you consider what a composite is. A composite is a witness, sometimes weeks after the fact, months after, years after the fact, describing to a composite artist who never seen the suspect who has to draw the composite. So, you're not going to
Mhm.
get an exact likeness,
Right.
but you could tell that that's the person they were trying to describe. And like I said, especially once I contacted them and they confirmed, yes, that's the person they were trying to describe. That's the best they could do with the composite as it came out.
How long, when you seen Jeffrey Dahmer at the mall, how long did you report that? Like how long?
Well, yeah, I didn't report it right away. When I went back to work on Wednesday, because I said my days off were Tuesday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. When I went back to work Wednesday, I started telling coworkers about the incident I had, and a couple of coworkers said, "Willis, you need to go to the police." And so I did go to the police. It was on Thursday morning when I got off work, and that's when they brushed me off.
Yeah, we're gonna get into that too.
Yeah.
Did you ever see him again?
Actually, I did. I ran into him twice in South Florida. I know that sounds crazy, running into that guy twice. One time, it was like about 3 weeks after that incident. I was on my way home, and this is back when they had home delivery with newspapers in the Miami Herald. And so when I turned down my street, there was this blue van behind me, and I made a right. Van made a right. I made a left. The van made a right, and then I made another left onto Bedford Avenue where I lived in at the time, and the van followed me all the way to my house. And I was thinking it was just somebody doing newspaper deliveries.
Right.
I didn't pay too much attention to it until I stopped in front of my house. I parked parallel in front of my house because I had my boat in the driveway. And as I started to get out of my car, the blue van pulled up parallel to my car and rolled his window down. And this guy said, "Hey, do you have insurance? You almost hit me." And I told him, almost doesn't count. I don't know what that means if I have insurance because I almost hit him. But that's
Right.
what he said to me, and I just went in the house, and it was just kind of strange and bizarre. So, after I took everything out of my pocket and stuff, I decided to go up to the kitchen, look out the front window, and sure enough, there he was sitting on my neighbor's car facing my house, staring at my car in my house. And
Hmm.
it took me a while to realize that was the guy I encountered in the mall. And so I ran back into my bedroom and I got my gun. But when I went back outside, he had left. He was gone. I actually jumped in my car and tried to find him, but I never could find him. He disappeared.
Weird.
So that was
Hmm.
kind of strange there.
That was very strange. Wonder if he
Yeah.
was stalking you.
Well, the reason I'm 99% sure that was him is because I was going through the phone logs, And I saw a witness had called the Hollywood Police Department and gave a date of a blue van that was parked in the parking lot of this convenience store, one of those independent convenience stores. And the statement was very short. It was just a short phone call, and his statement said that the driver looked exactly like the composite from the Hollywood Mall.
Mm.
So you have a blue van and you have a matching composite, and I realized that, I knew that's the guy. That's him. That's Jeffrey Dahmer.
Right.
Followed me home, and
That's
I go right past that convenience store to go home. I have to go right past it, so I knew. Yeah, he was in that parking lot there, and as I get off, I get off of work like 5:00, 5:30 in the morning.
Mm.
So this would have been around 5:30, and it was in the summer, so. Yeah, we get off a little earlier in the summer because the circulation's down, the humidity's up. So
very, very creepy.
yeah,
Very creepy.
yeah, when the humidity's up, the presses run a little better because the paper's
Cat,
not.
Kathy B said, I wonder why he decided to talk to you. Do you think he remember you from the mall?
I have no idea, but I doubt it. I doubt it. Just like I didn't recognize him either, So I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that, but certainly I don't. He wouldn't have known what I was driving, and I was driving a Ford Aerostar at the time, and I don't think he would have known. In fact, I think I was driving a Pontiac Catalina. I had a Pontiac Catalina in '81, so yeah, he wouldn't have known. I think he was just prowling the streets, looking for somebody. So that's my opinion.
Wow.
Apparently that area was one of his hangouts because I was just the Hollywood Mall is not very far from my house. I'm in Hallandale. Hallandale is right next to Hollywood, so it's only like maybe a mile from where I lived.
That's creepy.
Yeah.
When you went to the police, what did you tell them?
Well, I went up to the window and I told the woman at the window that I was there about the incident at the Hollywood Mall. And I started explaining to her, and she pointed over by the elevator. They had a desk set up there. She said, we have a special desk set up just for that case. You need to speak to the officer. And there was an officer at that desk in a black uniform, regular police officer. And he's the one that was asking me the questions and completely dismissed me. So, yeah.
I mean, like, he just completely dismissed you? He didn't take anything you said in consideration?
No, I don't. Not at all. He
Not at
said
all.
that they'll get back to me if they need me, and they never called me back. Even though I gave them my phone number, my address, all my information, they've never called me back. So,
Wow.
and when I was going through the police records, I found another witness that says the exact same thing I did about that police officer, how condescending he was. And he brushed her off. He made her feel like she was just making everything up for attention. So, and she doesn't know me. I don't know her. She's passed away, so I have no way to even talk to her. But she was an older woman at the time. And her incident was exactly like mine. And you could read the police reports. They match perfectly what she says and what I say. And these reports were made before I ever even heard of her. And she's never heard of me. So
It's a damn
my
shame.
earbuds are not working for some reason. So I think let me see if they are.
Okay.
Oh, I think they are.
Hey.
Okay.
Did you ever reach out to John Walsh?
No, John doesn't want anything to do with anybody that doesn't go along with the artist tool theory. So he won't talk to me. In fact, he's accused me. At least I feel like he's accused me because indirectly, because he said there's people out there that are writing a book trying to make money off of his son. So obviously he's not going to want to talk to me. The odd thing about that is that he's made over $40 million, and I have made nothing. I've spent way more money than I'll ever make. So this is not about money for me.
Right.
You know,
What makes you so sure that this guy, Otis, did
it's actually
not
artists.
Otis? What makes you so sure that Otis is not the guy?
Because, like I said, I knew it had to be that guy I encountered, and he wasn't the guy I encountered. Okay. Plus, all these other witnesses say it wasn't Otis. They've made composites, and Otis was like 34 at the time, or 36, and he had a receding hairline. So there's a big difference between
Hmm.
his description and the description that all the witnesses gave. Plus, when you look at the records, Otis Tool was never even in South Florida, except for the one time that they dragged him down here.
Do you think the police just wanted to close the case? What evidence do they even have?
Right. Okay. Now, after after I went to the police department, like I said, I saw composites started coming out. So my thinking was at least they have their composite, and so I never bothered calling them back, thinking that what else can I do? You know, I didn't get a
Right.
tag number, so I don't have any more information to add. And they have their composite, so I gave up. I just let it go. But I worked for a newspaper, as I said, so I was still keeping up on the case. And then, a short time later, they started going after John Walsh's house guest, James Campbell. And I knew James Campbell had nothing to do with this. I haven't even seen a photo at the time of James Campbell, but I still knew he had nothing to do with this because the story that was coming out was that he may have targeted Adam. Adam was targeted. And I knew Adam wasn't targeted because obviously this guy came up to me first. So he obviously wasn't targeting Adam. In fact, I knew he was going to go up to somebody else. I just didn't know who. He was meandering through the store until he ended up in the toy department. And then a couple years later, I was going to work. My shift started at 7:30, and so I was going to work. And I'm sorry, I think my shift started at 7. It was 7 o'clock. My shift started 7 o'clock, not 7:30. But anyway, I was going to work, and the press room secretary came up to me with the newspaper, and she said, "Hey, Willis," because I told everybody my story, so everybody knew it by that time, just about. And she said, "Hey, Willis, is this the guy you saw in the mall?" She showed me the paper, and I said, "No." And she said, "Are you sure? Because he's saying he did it." And I said, "No, that's not the guy." And later I was reading this article in the story, and it was about this guy, Otis Elwood, too, who was claiming that he did it, according to the article. But anyway, he was totally dismissed after about 4 months by all the detectives as a viable
Hmm.
suspect because all his statements were clashing with other statements he was giving. He was giving hundreds of, confessions
Right.
and all over the country. And you can't be all over the country on the same day. So, some of them was killing someone in California and one in New Jersey on the same day, within an hour. So that's not even possible. But anyway, so they ended up dismissing him. So he was completely dismissed until they closed the case a year before. This one detective all of a
Hmm.
sudden decided he wanted to close the case, and he made up a report called the Matthews Report. It was a 400-page report, and he used that to close the case, that report, and he gave it to the Hollywood Police Department. And so they closed the case based on his report, claiming it was Otis Tool, but it wasn't Otis Tool. And he convinced John Walsh that it was Otis Tool. And the reason he was able to do that is because he worked for the Miami Beach Police Department, and he had a company called the Southern Institute of Polygraph. And the Hollywood Police Department hired his company to give the Walshes and James Campbell, John's house guest, polygraphs, and he exonerated them. So in John Walsh's book, right here, Tears of Rage, he called these detectives the biggest bunch of bumbling, stumbling idiots since the Keystone Cops, because they were all, they had no clue what they were doing. But yet, yet once they closed the case, all of a sudden these same police department detectives are his best friends and colleagues. And in 1987, Fox TV chose John Walsh to be the host of America's Most Wanted, the TV show. And one of these detectives, his name is Detective Joe Matthews, heard about it and he called John and he befriended him. And John remembered he was the detective that gave them the polygraphs and exonerated them. So apparently, John must have felt like he was one of the one detective that did know what he was doing because he exonerated them, and he hired this detective Joe Matthews on the TV show America's Most Wanted as the senior lead investigator on that TV show. So here he had this guy in a top position feeding him this false narrative about Otis Toole for years. And that's how John Walsh eventually came to believe that it was Otis Toole. Because in the beginning, John did believe it was Jeffrey Dahmer. Because Dahmer's own father called John and said his son murdered Adam. And John was so incensed because he called the Hollywood Police Department and he told them, you guys need to get up there and interview this guy. Even the FBI called him and said, the FBI called John too and told John, hey, what's going on down in Hollywood? How come they're not coming up here? The case is over. He doesn't have an attorney anymore. I could get them right in there to interview him. And they still refused to go up there. They were using every excuse they have not to interview Dahmer because they did not want Dahmer to be a suspect, apparently.
That's so crazy. You know what? I was going to bring that up. That his own father did call the police and make a tip to say,
Wait,
my son.
yeah, he called John Walsh, not the police.
Oh, he called John Walsh himself.
Yeah, and it was John that called the Hollywood Police Department. What happened was they refused to go up there. So what John did, he went to the state attorney's office in
Ooh.
Fort Lauderdale, and he asked them to make a letter, to write a letter stating that Florida would not seek capital punishment if Dahmer confessed. And he went to Jack Hoffman, the lead investigator, and he said, okay, here, I have this letter now. I want you to go up and interview them, Dahmer. And Jack, running out of excuses, used up one of his last excuses that he had. And he told John, listen, we don't have money for that kind of a trip. And John told him, because this is in his own book right here. John writes about it. John told Jack Hoffman, he says, listen, I'm making pretty good money these days. Here's a letter I have. I want you to go up and interview Dahmer and give this letter to him. I'll pay for the trip. So all his excuses used up, his back up against the wall. Finally, Jack Hoffman went up to interview Dahmer. But never in that interview, because I have this transcripts of the interview, never in that interview did Dahmer, was he offered that concession on the death penalty. Because it's not in the transcripts. That was a taped interview. Never once do you hear Jack Hoffman saying, hey, Jeffrey, Florida's not seeking the death penalty. Do you want to tell us what happened? Nothing like that. All Jack Hoffman did was he talked about Jeffrey Dahmer's upbringing and his past, and he brought some donuts with him, a box of donuts that his wife made, muffins rather, and he kept talking about the muffins, how good they were. That was the interview that he did with Dahmer. He never tried to get a confession with Dahmer.
Wow.
And so he comes back and he tells John Walsh that Dahmer looked him straight in the eye and said he didn't do it. And he believes Dahmer. So that's when John Walsh wrote Jeffrey Dahmer off as a suspect.
Is it true that Jeffrey Donald, I can't say his right. They know I can't pronounce certain names, but is it true that in that investigation, Jeffrey says something about he doesn't want to be labeled as a pedophile in prison?
Well, he said something similar to that. The FBI agent that interviewed him, you know, asked Jeffrey Dahmer about that. And he said that, that anybody that admits to killing a child will be murdered in prison, which ironically is what happened to him anyway.
Basically.
He did say something like that, yes. So
Yeah, I
the
read that.
FBI agent, Neil Patel is his name, said he took that as a confession.
Right.
It's about as close to a confession as you're going to get. When he asked Jeffrey Dahmer, he says, "Did you kill Adam?" And he said, "Listen, Neil, anybody that confesses to that is going to be murdered in prison." That's what he said.
Right.
So Neil said he took that as a confession.
Wow. I
Yeah,
read that part.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Did you read it in my book? Because not only is it my book, you can actually see
Mhm.
see
No,
him
I was
saying
reading it. I know this isn't that the edition, but I was reading it in here.
what I was saying. There's after they did that Netflix show, they actually contacted that FBI agent, and you could see him saying that. In fact,
Mm.
in fact, if you go on my webpage, my website, I have one of the videos there that if you wanted to play it back, you could hear Neil Patel, the interview with Neil Patel, and you could hear him actually say that he, Jeffrey Dahmer came about as close as to a confession as you can get to him.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So you have his father saying he did it. You have the FBI saying he believes he did it. You have his psychiatrist says he believes, Dahmer didn't go 10 years without killing. 10 years being between Stephen Hicks in 1978 and the time he got captured. Started murdering more people up in Milwaukee, I should say. So
Kathy B says, how long before the police made an arrest?
the police never made an arrest. Which police is she referring to?
Which police, Kathy B? Because she says it's been so long, I can't remember
Oh, well,
much, but how long before the police made an arrest?
no, well, Jeffrey Dahmer was arrested not for nothing he did in Florida, but it was for Milwaukee. What happened in Milwaukee when somebody escaped? Tracy Edwards, who escaped from his apartment. That's when he got captured. Because Tracy escaped from Dahmer's apartment and he had one handcuff still dangling from his wrist, and he ran up to two police officers.
Right.
And he didn't want to press charges or anything. He just wanted them to use their key to remove the handcuffs so he can go about his way. But they had Smith and Wesson handcuff keys, and they didn't fit this off-brand handcuff that he had. So the only way they can get the handcuff off is to go up to the apartment, 213, which was Jeffrey Dahmer's apartment, to ask him for the key. And that's how Jeffrey Dahmer ended up getting caught, because he never had a key. His way of getting the handcuffs off was to slice the wrists off after he murdered somebody.
Oh,
Yeah, so that was his way of getting him off. He never had a key for the handcuffs. So what happened when they asked him for the key? He said, "Well, it's in the bedroom." And he got up to start walking towards the bedroom, and they told him, "Stay put. We're gonna go get it." They went in there. They never found the key. There was no key. But that's what
oh.
they did find, was they found, all kinds of photographs of dismembered bodies, and that's when one of the detectives went back into the living room and showed it to the other detective and said, "Hey, look at these. These are real, the photos." And that's when Jeffrey Dahmer started freaking out, and they had to
I
arrest him.
want, yeah, I want to talk about that too. And I also want to talk about how there was a lot of talk how, oh, it couldn't have been him because he didn't have a vehicle. But let's talk about the vehicle that he had, the van from being at work.
Right. Well, where he worked was a sub shop. Let's first talk about how he got the job, if you want.
Yeah, let's talk about how Jeffrey got that job.
Okay. Well, Jeffrey Dahmer was discharged from the Army in March of 1981. Okay, and what happens when you're discharged from the Army? Because I was in the Air Force, all the branches do the same thing. I was discharged from Travis Air Force Base in California, outside of San Francisco, and I'm from New York at the time, as I said. And so what they do is they give you a one-way ticket to anywhere you want to go. You don't have to go back home to your home city. Whatever city you want to go to, that's where they'll give you a ticket to.
Oh,
They actually give you a voucher you traded in at the airport for a ticket to anywhere you want to go.
oh,
Yeah, that's how it works. So Jeffrey Dahmer took his voucher and he decided he wanted to go to Miami instead of going back to Ohio because he didn't want his father to know, that he was a failure in the Army.
mm,
But his father already knew anyway because they shipped all his belongings back, which is something they do in the military. And they shipped his belongings back to Ohio. So his father knew that he was out of the Army, but he had no clue where he was, at least for a while. But anyways, when he was in Miami, I estimated that he had about 800 and something dollars in cash, 1981 dollars. So, but I could, because looking at his DD 214 form, that's his discharge form.
right.
Yeah, they calculate if you have any leave left, that they pay you for, plus whatever money he had in his pocket. And so I calculated he had about $850 or so. And he
Mm,
was using that to stay in hotels and drinking up a lot of the money real fast. And so he ran
mm,
out. He ran out of money and he started dumpster diving. And one day he was dumpster diving in this dumpster behind a strip mall. And the manager of this sub shop called Sunshine Subs was taking the garbage out, and he saw uh, this gentleman, if you can call him that, this guy eating out of his dumpster. And he asked him, he said, "Hey, what are you hungry? You need a sandwich?" And he actually went inside, made a sandwich, and brought it back out to him. A couple of days later, he saw the same guy eating out of the dumpster again. And that time he asked the guy, who was Jeffrey Dahmer, if he needed a job. And so he hired Jeffrey Dahmer as a busboy.
mm.
That's how he got a job in this sub shop. Now, he was the manager of the sub shop, but the guy that actually owned the sub shop owned that sub shop plus another store called Mr. Pizza. His name was Mike Pelletier. And the blue van was used mostly at the pizza store, which was about, I'd say, 10 blocks apart, which is about a mile.
Mm.
So he had two white pickup trucks and a blue van. And this was the summertime, so they didn't really use the blue van that much because business is slow.
Gotcha.
So yeah, so and the blue van was more expensive on gas. I know nowadays the delivery people use their own vehicles. Like Uber Eats and all these other delivery.
Yeah,
They have
yeah.
their own vehicles, but back in those days there was no Uber Eats or Lyft so
Right.
you didn't use your own vehicle. Most people that delivered, most stores had their own vehicles that they used. And so he used the two white pickup trucks. And in the wintertime, he would use the blue van as well when it would get busy. He had three delivery vehicles. So the blue van sat mostly quiet in the back of the store. And a lot of the employees would take it and use it. Everybody knew where the keys were. And they would use that blue van. And apparently Jeffrey Dahmer was using it as well. So that's how he got a hold of that blue van. And that blue van is connected to all the locations where Jeffrey Dahmer had attempted abductions.
Mm,
Obviously, the Hollywood Mall, okay, because multiple witnesses saw Adam being tossed into a blue van. And the location where he worked had a blue van. And the location where the severed head was found, if you read, there were 4 witnesses at that site that saw a blue van there 3 days before the severed head was found. So you have those witnesses as well. And one of those witnesses, his name is Dennis Bub, because I found the phone log. Going through the phone logs, I found a phone call that was made by him to the Hollywood Police Department. Because what happened was, uh, this was on August 7th. He was a public truck driver, and he was driving up north
Mm.
to pick up, with an empty truck, to pick up a full truck and bring it back down to South Florida. And when he passed that location on mile marker 131, which it was at the time, he saw this blue van parked on the side of the turnpike. And there was a white male on this footbridge with a white bucket that he called a pickle bucket. And he was taking something round out of the bucket and tossing it into the water. And so I asked him, when I contacted him, I said, uh, well, obviously he called the police department because I have the phone log. That's how I got his name. So I asked him, did
Right.
anybody ever call him back? And he said, yes, within the hour they called him back. And when he tried to tell him his story, what he witnessed, he was told, and this is his quote, yeah, we already know about the blue van. It has nothing to do with the Adam Walsh case. This is why John Walsh refers to them as the biggest bunch of bumbling, stumbling idiots since the Keystone Cops, because they were at the time in 1981. They had no clue what they were doing.
Wow.
Yeah, so here you have the blue van there. The severed head was found on August 10th. 3 days later, and on August 11th is when these witnesses started calling the Hollywood Police Department, as well as the Indian River Sheriff's Department started calling. They were getting all kinds of calls from that area because of these witnesses.
And
So
wasn't he also seen at the crime scene?
what are you saying?
Wasn't Jeffrey Dahmer seen at the crime scene?
Which crime scene?
He was seen at a oh my god, where was it? Where his head was, right? Like a few.
Yeah, okay. That's those witnesses I was just telling you about.
Right.
They saw a white male. They can't swear it was dark. This is 12:30 in the morning, so they can't swear it was Jeffrey Dahmer. But
Hmm.
what they do swear to is that there was a blue van there. The sliding side door was open, and there was a male, about
Mm.
6 feet tall or so, on that footbridge with a white bucket, taking something round out of the bucket. And they blew
Right.
these witnesses off. Now, why would you blow a witness off like that when they say something round out of a bucket was tossed into the water? You would want to call them in and interview them. I mean,
For
what
sure.
else would they be tossing in the water that's round at 12:30 in the morning at that site? You
Mm.
know, and
That's crazy.
obviously, we know a severed head can be considered
Right.
round. So
Hey, Kimberly. Kimberly said, did they ever find Adam?
I believe I may have found Adam's blood spatter and the crime scene where Adam was murdered. And that's the cover. Hold that cover up again.
Gotcha.
That's the meter room. That's the meter room. Now you see that cover, the crime scene tape. Okay, the crime scene tape. Look at it. It says crime scene, do not cross, right?
Right.
Okay. Well, one of my attorneys told me every time she looks at it, she thinks it should say crime scene, do not investigate. So when you get your new book,
Mm.
you'll see I changed the crime scene tape
Mhm.
because they refuse to investigate that meter room. There is blood spatter on that back wall in there that was described as being indicative of a homicide. It's kind of blurry,
Can you
but
talk about that a little bit?
yeah. Okay. Well, the guy that owned that was the manager of that sub shop where Jeffrey Dahmer worked,
Mm-hmm.
he said about 10 days before, or I should say 10 days after Jeffrey Dahmer was hired. You there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. He said about 10 days after Jeffrey Dahmer was hired that it was his job to take the garbage out.
Mhm.
And he went out to bring the garbage out to the dumpster, and he comes back inside, and Ken said that Jeffrey told him in a very matter-of-fact tone, "Hey, Kenny, there's a dead man by your dumpster." So Kenny goes out to the dumpster to look, and sure enough, there's a dead man there. So he goes back inside and calls the police. Police show up, and obviously, you doing a lot of cases. I know you're pretty familiar with one of the first questions the police ask: "Who found the body?"
Mm.
I always want to know that. And he says, "My busboy." And they said, "Well, get him out here. We need to speak to him." And that's how Jeffrey Dahmer got his name all over this police report. And it's in the book. You can read it. You can also go to my website, Justice for Adam, and pull it up and see it. Okay. So anyway, everything in that police report is what Jeffrey Dahmer said, Mr. Jeffrey Dahmer, because they were giving him a little respect as a witness. They didn't have a clue in 1981 what he would become, the Milwaukee cannibal. You know? But so he was just a witness. But I went and got that police report when he told me that because, and I was reading the police report from Miami-Dade Records. And after I was reading that police report and realized that it said in there, the man was had only one shoe on. And the other shoe was found in the meter room because Mr. Jeffrey Dahmer said that he was sleeping in the meter room. He was a derelict. He went by the name Bobby. He was always drunk. So, like I said, they went in the meter room. They found the other shoe, and I knew right away. I said, "That's it, the meter room." So I made a beeline for that meter room, and I managed to get in there. And after I got in that meter room, I just knew for sure this has to be the place he brought Adam. So I went home, I got my camera, I went back there, took some photos and stuff. And I even contacted the police officer that made that report out. And he remembered making that report out. And he told me, he said that they don't make them out like that any longer. Now all the reports are made on a computer, on a laptop in their car. So they don't handwrite reports out any longer. And he remembered the dead guy. So, but he didn't remember Jeffrey Dahmer. In fact, he was surprised that Jeffrey Dahmer's name, because obviously he knew who Jeffrey Dahmer was, but he never made the connection, even though Dahmer had his name all over this report that he wrote. Because, like I said, in 81, he was just a witness.
Right.
But he remembered vividly the dead guy because, number one, he said he was in full rigor mortis, which means, it takes a while to go into full rigor mortis. So he didn't kill him when he was taking the garbage out right that night. He must have killed him, at least 8 hours prior or the night before and dragged him out to the dumpster. And that's why one shoe was left behind.
Jesus.
And also he said the main reason he remembers the dead guy is because he was covered in ants and he was only 16 inches high. That's a police joke, by the way. You don't get it?
No.
16 inches high. He was in a prone position. You don't get it.
I don't. I'm sorry.
He said the guy was only 16 inches high. And I asked him, 16 inches? And he goes, yeah, he was in the prone position. He was laying down he was flat on the ground.
Ugh. How could that even be possible?
Okay. So anyway.
Go ahead.
I took photos and stuff, and I went to somebody who was a reporter, and I was telling him about this room, this meter room, and that I believe that's where Adam was brought. And he kept telling me, nah, no way, no way. He said that dead guy was probably just a dumpster feud. I said, listen, I don't want to mention the guy's name because it's not worth it.
Okay.
But Anyways, he says, no way. He says, that was a dumpster fire. I said, listen, Dahmer was already working. He wouldn't be eating out of the dumpster any longer, you know?
Mm.
So, because he said this was about 10 days after Dahmer was working. So he was already working for, 10
Right.
days. And so, anyway, I took a lot of photos. And unbeknownst to me, he went and called ABC Primetime back when Chris Cuomo was working for ABC. And then he went to CNN, and then he got fired from CNN too. But anyways, when he was working for ABC, he was narrating that show, ABC Primetime, and they flew down here to do a TV show, an episode on that meter room, and they hired one of the best CSI experts to go into that meter room with permission from the mall to go in there and do that TV show, and that's when she found the blood spatter on this back wall that she
Mm.
described as being indicative of a high velocity homicidal pattern. And even in that TV show, she describes how the homicide would have occurred, saying that there had to be a body down on the ground here and the chopping motion. She showed how the chopping motion would have to have occurred to cause that blood spatter to go up the wall like that. And they contacted the Hollywood Police Department, interviewed them, and their response was that it's a coincidence, but they don't believe it's related to Adam. They think two pit bulls could have gotten in there and caused that blood spatter. That's indicative
Mm.
of a homicidal pattern, chopping
Right.
mode, and yet that's what they said. And so I went myself because this is in Dade County. The Hollywood Mall is in Broward County, and so I went to Dade County. And I asked them about that meter room because they already knew about it by that time. And
Right.
they told me they think a bird flew into the wall. So
Lord.
there
Mm.
was a there was a small 2-inch bird in that room on the opposite side, and it didn't look like it was dead for that long. It looked like it recently died. So I asked Chuck McCulley, the lead homicide investigator in Miami. I asked him. He said, "Well, It, if that bird ran into the wall, it doesn't explain how this was described as a homicidal pattern unless that bird was murdered, by Jan Johnson. She described it as a homicidal pattern." He started screaming at me, saying, "Jan Johnson, she's worthless. You hear me?" And I said, "Sir, if she's so worthless, why is she the one that trains your police department?" So you see the mentality these people have, how they cover up and they don't want to investigate. And that's the reason I changed that crime scene tape. They
Mm.
refused to investigate that room. Somebody died in that room, and it wasn't the dead guy because he didn't have any blood on him.
Mm.
It
It was
wasn't him.
somebody else.
So
Right.
there was a homicide that visited that room, and yet they
It was,
refused to investigate. To this day, they
it was
won't
somebody
investigate.
else. Right.
They don't care whose it was. They don't care. They don't want to
Mm.
investigate. I know you told me about some of these cases that you work on where police departments
Mhm.
are like that. They refuse to investigate.
Matter of fact, Kimberly Lotz is in here right now, and her grandson was murdered. She hasn't got no justice.
Right? A lot of cases out there like that. John Walsh has got no justice. He's got fake
Right.
justice. Fake justice is not justice, you know?
Right.
So it's not
Uh,
true justice.
Nevus asks, "Do you believe that he may ingested young Adam?"
Well, how am I supposed to know that? Nobody would know. Anything's possible with Jeffrey Dahmer. He did have an apartment at the time, and I've heard suggestions that because of the time frame of when Adam may have been murdered and when the severed head was found, that he may have taken it back to his apartment and had it in his refrigerator for a few days before he disposed of it. Because he did eventually lose that room about that time, and he may have lost the room and had to get rid of his trophy, and that's when he may
Mm.
have disposed of it. And then also, if you know that Stephen Hicks, his so-called first murder, we have no idea if that was really the first or not. I've heard stories where there could have been other murders before Stephen Hicks. And he, when he
Damn.
murdered Stephen Hicks, he used garbage bags, as you know. He had them in the back seat of his car to dispose of the body, right? You've heard that story.
Right, I did.
Yeah. So anyway, and in Milwaukee, the same thing. He was using garbage bags to dispose of bodies, chopping them up, put it in the garbage bags, putting them in the dumpster behind the building where he lived.
Right.
And so we had
Hmm.
a dumpster right behind the store where he worked. And in the crawl space, I went down in that crawl space and I found a blanket spread out, a belt in the folds of the blanket, and there were several black garbage bags, which tells me that those could have been just extra ones. And he may have had other ones that he used to chop Adam's body up there and dispose of it in the dumpster and decided to keep the severed head as a trophy until he had to
Mm.
dispose of it. I mean, that's just a theory.
Right.
But uh, it's a possibility.
You never
So,
know.
yeah, what's a blanket doing down in the crawl space, along
Mm.
with garbage bags? Who would have a
Right.
need for garbage bags and a blanket down in a crawl space? There's photos of it. You can see it in the book, and also you can see it on my website. Go to justiceforadam.com and go to the meter room. Click on the
Right.
meter room, and you'll see I have some meter room photos there of my own that I took.
Also, guys, I posted his links is in the description, the comments and stuff. Description of his YouTube channel, his Facebook. So please go and check it out. Also order his book. We're gonna get into that also in a few. But Kimberly wants to know whether they're able to do a blood test.
Okay, now when Jan Johnson went into that room, she did take swabs of the blood that was on that wall, and she never could get DNA out of it because of the humidity in Florida. I don't know if you know, but humidity is one of the worst things for blood, and also the line in the wall because that was a mortared CBS block wall, and it was mortared, and so the line is very corrosive. So there was no chance of getting DNA out of it. In fact, after she did that, I went back into that meter room myself, under the premise that anything I do is legal unless I get caught. So I I went back in there and took my own samples, and I
Mm-hmm.
sent them to a lab in Texas, and they couldn't get anything either. And my thinking was they probably didn't want to get anything because they work with a lot of police departments. So what I did was after they returned some of the samples, I went back, got some more samples, and okay, I got some more samples, and I sent them to a local lab here and in Florida. And sure enough, when I went there were placards all over the walls from police departments. So my thinking was correct that they do a lot of work for police departments. So when I filled out all the forms, I didn't use Adam Walsh's name. I didn't use that location. I just put victim for the name, and the only thing that I try to keep correct because you do have to the time 80 early 80s. I put and the environment because you want to get a good analysis. So they do use your that whatever information you can give them as part of their uh, test. But and still the good doctor, she told me there was no way they could get anything out of it, and they tried, and I believe her. So there's no way to get DNA.
So the answer is no, guys. Kimberly says absolutely they refuse to investigate because they're forcing families to investigate. Justice for Dante Martin, which is her grandson.
You Well, when there's an old saying, when you mess up, never fess up. And
Mm,
they messed up really bad. And for a number of reasons, I believe they do not want to make the connection, you know. And, just my opinion, and everybody
mm,
can formulate their own opinions, but maybe they didn't want to investigate because they didn't want they were afraid of lawsuits, maybe, because maybe all those murders up in Milwaukee could have been prevented, had Dahmer been captured. So,
Good.
maybe they're afraid of those lawsuits coming down on them. There could be all kinds of reasons. Maybe they just don't want anybody to know how bad they messed up. They're covering their own butts, Because back in 1991, when I went to work, I went into the press room and we were doing paper check where we cross check all the papers, make sure everybody has the right pages on the papers. We had 8 presses. We had them lined up, and I was going through the papers and I saw this little article about this guy that was captured up in Milwaukee. And as soon as I saw that mugshot, I didn't even know this guy was in Florida. This was a little article, didn't say nothing about Florida. It was just a little article about Milwaukee. And as soon as I saw that mugshot, I knew right away. I started to say out loud, this is the guy I saw in the mall. And I heard voices around me saying, Willis, what are you talking about? And calm down. And I was about as calm as I was going to get. I was drinking 1 cup of coffee after another that whole night. I went back to the police department, and they told me that the detective that was on the case is on vacation, and he would call me when he gets back. And it took about 4 months before he called me. But in the meantime, I went to the Miami Herald Library, which is actually a storage room where they kept hard copies of all the papers. And I asked them to do a search for me and get the composite from 1981 of the suspect. And they gave me a composite. And finally, like I said, after about 4 months, when the lead detective, that was the same detective from 1981, he was on the case still. And when I went back to see him for an interview, because he called me, told me to come in, and I showed him the composite that the Herald gave me, along with the mugshot that was in the paper. And I showed it to him. And I said, look, you can see this is the guy I saw in the mall. And his first question to me was, well, how come you didn't come to us in 81? And I explained to him, but I did come in 81. And explained to him, about the officer that I talked to and all of that.
Right.
And I remember his jaw dropped when I showed him that mugshot, because he knew something I didn't know. I didn't realize it until 2008 when I got a hold of the case files. I had the wrong mugshot. They gave me the wrong mugshot. The mugshot they gave me was not from the Hollywood Mall. It was from the Twin City Mall, where there was another Sears in that mall. And that incident mirrored the Hollywood Mall, where a mother took her son with her to the store, left him in the toy department while she went shopping. The only difference between the two stories is where Ray Walsh went shopping for a lamp, and Ginger Keaton, the Twin City Mall mother, she went shopping for a dress. That's the only difference. So she left Terry Keaton, her son, in the toy department. And Jeffrey Dahmer tried to abduct him. But he got away. He was 10 years old. Adam was only 6, so he didn't stand a chance. He got away, ran to the clothing department, and begged this woman who was there with her son buying back to school clothes for help, and he took off. And she took, Jane Hoover is her name, she took Terry to the shoe department. And the guy from the shoe department, his name is Barry Culberton, he paged over the speaker system for Ginger, the mother of Terry Keaton. And she came to the shoe department to pick her son up. And she wanted to report the incident. So they went back out into the main mall corridor to look for security. And while they were in the mall, Terry points out to his mother and says, hey, Mom, that's the man right there. She got a good look at him, too. And she said that he gave her this look that scared her to death. And so she just wanted to get out of there. She never reported it to security. And on the way out of the mall, she saw a blue van inappropriately parked in the fire lane, just like it was at the Hollywood Mall. So anyway, they made a police report, and she made a composite. They made composites from that mall. And this was on July 13th, 2 Mondays before Adam was abducted. Adam was abducted on July 27th. So after Adam was abducted, everybody from that mall started calling the Hollywood Police Department, the witnesses, as well as the police chief, John Atwater. He's calling them too, telling them, hey, we think this incident is related to Adam Walsh. There was a blue van involved. It's a white male, 6 feet tall approximately. Everything is matching. The composite matches your composite. Everything's matching. So they sent 2 detectives up to Riviera Beach to interview all the witnesses. And they dismissed every single one of them, including the police chief. You know why? The composite didn't match James Campbell. It matched the Hollywood Mall composite, but not James Campbell. And James Campbell at the time was their suspect. And I'll get into that, why he was a suspect. He was they had blinders on because they was so convinced he was their guy. So they were dismissing all the witnesses from the Twin City Mall. They dismissed all the witnesses from the Hollywood Mall, the witnesses from the Turnpike, witnesses from South Beach incident, where there was another blue van and a white male, Plantation, Deerfield Beach. All these incidents where police chiefs were calling them saying that they have police reports and their incidents matched Adam. They were dismissing everybody because the lead detective, Jack Hoffman, was so convinced James Campbell was his guy. I mean, he threatened James Campbell, cursed him out, and he was telling him, we're going to get you one way or the other. Because during the interview or interrogation with James Campbell, James admitted that he was having an affair for several years, 3 years, in fact, with John Walsh's wife while John Walsh was out to work, because John Walsh allowed him to live in his house. Not a good idea. So he was having an affair with Reve, and he admitted it. And then the worst thing is that he admitted that he proposed marriage to Reve. And Reve turned him down because she had a son, being Adam, with John. So she could marry him. And by coincidence, 2 weeks before Adam was murdered or abducted, John told James to pack his things up and get out of the house. So they were thinking this was James' way of getting revenge.
Right.
Okay, because Reve turned him down, John kicked him out, and he wanted to get revenge. And that's why they figured Adam was targeted. And he was their prime suspect. And they were dismissing everything, everybody. So naturally in 1991, when I went there with that composite, and I told you it was Jack Hoffman who was still on the case, and his jaw dropped because he realized that composite was from the Twin City Mall. He knew it. I didn't know it at the time, but he knew it. He had to know it. And he's the one that dismissed it. He's the one that's dismissing everything. Actually, I believe that's my opinion. That's when all of a sudden the case files dropped from 10,000 possibly to 7,000 pages. Because, there were pages missing out of the case files all of a sudden when Dahmer was captured, after he was captured. And all the Artist 2 evidence disappeared too. That was in their records department. And I believe that's when all that happened. All Artist 2's evidence grew legs and walked off.
What?
Yeah. I believe the only person that would have done that is the person that had the most to lose. And who had the most to lose? The guy that was going around dismissing everything. So, you take that for what it's worth.
Why do you... Go ahead.
No, you.
Why do you think that John Walsh really, with every bone in his body, thinks that he got the right man?
Well, because Joe Matthews, remember I said that Joe Matthews was hired onto America's Most Wanted. And he's the one that's convincing John, in my opinion, that it was Artist 2. So I mean, I've called America's Most Wanted myself. And I've talked to them because one time I was watching America's Most Wanted on TV, and they were doing an episode about some young boy that was abducted from a mall. I forget the city, the place. It was in the Midwest somewhere, from a shopping mall. And John Walsh comes on the TV and shaking his angry finger in the camera like this. Goes, now I can relate myself to this next segment because I myself had my son abducted from a mall. Not one witness came forward. Right? So when I heard that, I was incensed. So I called America's Most Wanted, and this young girl answers the phone, and I told her, I said, listen, I was just watching the show, and John came on and said that not one witness came forward in his son's abduction. And I was there in the Hollywood Mall when that happened, and I've been trying to go forward ever since it happened. She goes, oh, okay, sir, thank you. Like that. And she said it in a tone that really meant goodbye, because all of a sudden I heard the dial tone. And this is when you heard real dial tones, the rotary phones and, before cell
Right.
phones. And so I heard a dial tone, and she was gone. She hung up on me, apparently.
Wow.
So I got incensed enough to call back and ask for a supervisor. And the supervisor gave me very similar treatment. She said, okay, so, well, we have your information. We'll pass it on. They never pass it on. No, she said, somebody will call you back. She took my phone number. Nobody ever called me back. You know why? Can you figure it out real quick? Let's see how smart you are. Come on. I told you already. If you're following me,
They
who,
got they're already convinced that they got the
oh,
right
no,
guy.
who was the senior lead investigator on America?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Probably telling them they were going to him saying, hey, look, this guy
Yeah.
called. So they would go to before it gets to John. And he says, I
Mm.
discount that. That don't have nothing. If you get any more of these wacko calls, because when she hung up on me, like my thinking was, oh, they're training these girls to weed out the weirdos, and I just got weeded out. You know,
Mm.
that's why she hung up on me, because I'm sure they get a lot of weirdos calling in with stupid stuff. So that I'm
Joe.
trying to weed a lot of that out of there. I mean, I felt like she must have thought I was just one of those weirdos and hung up on me.
Yeah.
So,
Neva said Joe.
uh, yeah.
Neva said Joe. Yeah. Wow, this is crazy.
And
What made you
Joe's
what
book, let me just say this real quick. See this
go
book
ahead.
here? This is the book that was used to close the case right here, Bringing Adam Home.
Bringing Adam home.
Right on page 26 of that book, this is what Joe Matthews says about that blue van. The blue van that was cited at the Hollywood Mall by numerous witnesses, okay, at the site where Adam's severed head was found by 4 witnesses, and at the place where Dahmer worked by a number of witnesses that say there was a blue van there. This is what he says in his book on page 26. To me, quote unquote, to me, all those sightings of a blue van were about as consequential as the sightings of the Loch Ness monster. And then he goes on to explain how it just wasted all the police time looking for a blue van that had nothing to do with Adam's abduction. So that's what he says about it.
Hmm.
He says that without ever talking to not one witness, because I know all the witnesses. He's never called any of them. The only witnesses he's talked to are Otis Tools cellmates, witnesses like that say, yeah, everybody in prison knows he did it. It's all over TV. Those are not
But
witnesses.
but yet artists too confessed.
He confessed, he recanted, he confessed, he recanted, he confessed to hundreds of crimes. Everybody dismissed him. So you have to believe that he lied about 100 murders, and Adam is the only one he was telling the truth about.
Mm.
Right?
Hmm.
That's what you would have to believe.
Right.
So,
Insane.
yeah.
What made you want to write a book?
Well, because I filed a lawsuit against them. Joe Matthews. I filed a lawsuit against him. I filed a lawsuit against the Hollywood Police Department. I filed a lawsuit against the state attorney's office to get records. And I didn't win the lawsuits. I went to the 4th District Court in Fort Lauderdale where I lost, and I appealed to the 17th District Court in Fort Lauderdale, and I appealed to the 4th District Court in West Palm Beach, the Court of Appeals. And they rubber stamped the 17th District's decision. So that's why I wrote the book. The book is my appeal, my final appeal to the highest court in the land. And you know what court that is, right? Another test. This is another test. Come on.
The justice system.
No, this is the court. No, this my final appeal is to the court of public opinion.
Oh, what we was talking about earlier.
My appeal to the court of public opinion.
Gotcha.
So that's why I wrote the book. And also I wrote it because the witnesses at the Hollywood Mall, that saw Adam being dragged out, like Philip Law, and he thought that might have been an older brother or a stepfather, rather. Philip Law thought it was a stepfather because Adam was screaming as he's being dragged out of the store, saying, "You're not my daddy. You're not my daddy. I don't want to go. I don't want to go." Right? And Philip turned around, started watching backwards, and he remembered Adam, because he knew something didn't seem right. But his thinking at the time was, kids don't respect their stepfathers. And it was probably a rambunctious kid that didn't want to leave the toy department.
Right.
You're not my daddy. That's what a kid would say if it's a stepfather,
Yeah.
So that's what he was thinking. This is 1981. You didn't see these kinds of incidents back then. So he hesitated. And when he was going to the mall, he lost his parking space because there was this blue van clogging up the traffic. It was parked in the fire lane. And the traffic had to go single lane around it back and forth. So he lost his space and he had to walk around. After he parked further out, he had to walk around the blue van to go inside the store. So he was really upset about it. And then when he went to the service desk after he saw that incident, he ran back outside. The blue van, that kid, and the guy were all gone.
Mm-hmm.
And there's other witnesses that have similar incidents where they saw the incidents. They saw Adam being dragged out of the store, which flies completely in the face of the narrative the police used to close the case when they pinned it on Otta's tool. They're claiming a security guard kicked Adam out of the store with 4 kids. And she kicked him out. And Adam was wandering around in the parking lot, and Otta's tool came in and offered him candy, and Adam willingly got into Otta's tool's car, and they drove off. That's the narrative they used to close the case.
Wow.
It flies in the face of all these witnesses that saw Adam screaming and protesting as much as a 6-year-old can protest. And I believe that may have been the reason the security guard was called, because of Adam making all that noise, protesting.
But yet nobody helped that little boy.
Because like I just told you,
Damn.
Law thought, this was 1981, he thought that might have been a stepfather. Bill Bowen was outside. He saw this guy tossing this boy into the van, lifting him up and tossing him like a sack of potatoes. And Adam, again, was still screaming, "I don't want to go. I don't want to go." And he hesitated. He saw the guy jump in the van and screech off. To this day, he can still smell the burning rubber. So, and another one is Mia Taylor. Mia Taylor and her brother were there watching Adam play the game. They weren't playing with him, but they were just standing there watching him and this other kid play. And their mother came to pick them up. And her brother, Joel, asked his mother if he could stay a little bit longer. But by that time, Jeffrey Dahmer was leaning over Adam. So this would have been just before Philip Law. He was leaning over and whispering to him something. She couldn't quite hear what he was saying, but she was whispering. And when her mother said, "Come on, let's go," Joel said, "Can we stay a little bit longer?" And she said to Joel, she says, "No, his dad is here now." So she was thinking that was his dad. Leaning over and taking him by the fingertips and walking out with him. So had I gone further into the toy department, I would have known better because of that encounter I told you about earlier. I didn't
Right.
follow him all the way up to the toy department for no reason. But I let my guard down too. And I turned around and left. It's easy to let your guard down in 1981. I mean, I probably wouldn't let it down so easy today. And, after after the 80s, the 1980s, when, it was a decade of serial killers.
Do you feel guilty?
Of course I do. I felt so guilty that I joined one of the search teams because they were asking on TV if anybody wants to help to search for Adam to join these search teams. And I joined one of them. We searched all day, going through people's backyards, looking in dumpsters and things like that for items that they gave us a list to look for, like his captain's hat, that red and white shirt and his flip flops and the clothes that he had on. They gave us a list, and so we were looking for those kinds of things. And of course, we never found anything.
Right.
Right?
You do know it's not your fault, though.
Well, I always say to myself that you know, if it wasn't Adam, it would have been someone else because somebody was going to have a bad day that day. He was determined to get somebody.
Right.
So, I mean, like
How, how, good.
he came up to me first before Adam. So,
That's what I was about to, right. How distant were you guys?
arm's length.
Woo.
Yeah, not at first. At first, he was at the entrance, and I was inside Radio Shack at a table where there was some items on the table, and there was a sign that said "Red Tag Sale." And it had all these items on the table that had little red tags on them. And I was to this day, I don't remember what I was looking at, but I picked something up that caught my eye, and I was looking at it, and that's when he tried to start a conversation with me. So.
Kimberly said, wasn't Adam 6 years old? How could you kick him out?
He wasn't kicked out. If she's listening, I said that was the police narrative. All these witnesses just said that he was dragged out.
Right.
Right. There was no security guard. The security guard, because I went through all the records and the witnesses, and she didn't even show up until Adam was already gone for at least 15 to 20 minutes before she even showed up in the toy department. So here's the deal. Reve went there. She left Adam in the toy department. She went to go shop for a lamp. They didn't have the lamp she wanted, so she returned to the toy department. I mean, she was gone for a while. It wasn't like 5 minutes or 10 minutes. She was gone for a good 30 minutes to 40 minutes.
Damn.
Yeah. And when she returned, Adam wasn't there. But all the other kids were still there, right? The other kids that were supposed to have been kicked out, they were still there when she went back there. And she was trying to ask them if they seen her son. But they were too busy playing. According to Jeffrey Walsh, in John's own book, here, Reve says that, and this is in her statement too, in her interview statement. She says that she went up to one of the boys and asked them, and nobody would respond. So finally, this one Spanish kid finally answered her, and all he did was point towards the West Garden Center exit. And she was thinking that he didn't understand her because he didn't speak good English, or he was just too busy, to answer properly. So, and she was thinking Adam would never go out the West exit because they came in the North entrance. So she just started to run out in the main corridor and run up and down the corridor looking for Adam. And then she didn't see him, so she runs back to the toy department. And when she runs back there, all the kids were gone. So what does that tell you? What does it tell you? Adam was kicked out while she was in the corridor. Right? I mean, not Adam, the other 4 kids.
The other kid, yeah.
The security got kicked out. The one she put out after Adam was already gone. Because when she returned, she went out to the corridor because Adam was gone. She was looking for him. But when she returned, those other kids were gone. See?
He was
So
taken
Adam was already
taken
out of there before the security. So they used that security guard as their scapegoat. just like they use other witnesses as their scapegoat. If you look anywhere on the internet, you will see that Otis Toole gave a deathbed confession. John Walsh himself keeps saying this, talking about this deathbed confession that never happened. Okay, there never was a deathbed confession. And in Joe Matthews' book, he talks about Otis Toole's niece, how she gave that deathbed confession. He says that Sarah Patterson, his niece, called America's Most Wanted and told him that her uncle gave a deathbed confession. That's what he says in his book. And he tells John Walsh this story about this Sarah Patterson, saying that her uncle gave a deathbed confession.
Right.
Sarah Patterson passed away at 50. So this is what he does. He uses people that passed away so they can't refute what he said.
Lord.
But what he doesn't understand is somebody might take enough initiative to look through the case files and read Sarah Patterson's statement that she gave to the state attorney's office under oath, which is completely contrary to what Joe Matthews says about this deathbed confession. Because this one, Sarah Patterson really says in her interview while she's under oath, right, when she was still alive. And she says that, first of all, she never visited her uncle when he passed away. The last time she visited her uncle was in December of 1995, and Otis Toole passed away in September of 1996, which is 9 months. So that alone is not a deathbed confession. 9 months before he passed away. That's not a deathbed confession. And also, in that interview, she's saying, when you see John Walsh, tell him that Matthews is a jerk. She's calling him all kinds of names. And the state attorney even asked her, he says, who Matthews? She said, yeah, he's a jerk. So whatever that means, apparently he's taking and twisting things even back then, that she says. Another one is Barry Culverton. Barry Grimilli. Barry Grimilli, he was in charge of the infirmary where Otis Toole passed away, right? Okay, now, in Matthew's book, okay, he also says Barry Grimilli called him at America's Most Wanted and told him that he actually overheard the deathbed confession that Otis Toole made. But why would Barry Grimilli, when he was alive, call Matthews and tell him that he overheard Otis Toole give a deathbed confession when, in his interview with the state attorney's office, under oath again, say something completely contrary to what Matthews says in his book? Okay, because I read his interview under oath. This is what he says. Okay, paraphrasing. He says, I was watching America's Most Wanted one day when I heard John Walsh come on and say something about a deathbed confession, and that's just not true. Otis Toole never opened up about anything. So that's completely contrary to what they're using to close the case. Do these idiots think nobody's going to check the case files? And probably nobody has. I don't think too many people have. I just took the effort to do that. But and again, he does the same thing with other witnesses too. Like I said, with Mia Taylor. Mia Taylor was in that mall 2 days in a row. She was there Sunday, July 26th, the day before Adam was abducted. And she was there Monday, July 27th, with her brother Joel. And their mother left them, and their mother went there to shop and speak with a friend. She had a friend that worked there. And they wandered off and ended up in the toy department. And on the Sunday, Jeffrey Dahmer tried to abduct her brother, Joel. And they got lucky because their mother showed up just in time, in the nick of time. They ran to their mother in the nick of time, and he took off. And then she was there again on Monday. And again, on Sunday, after he tried to abduct Joe, their mother came to pick him up. Like I said, they left, and they also saw the blue van parked there in the fire lane, in the same spot where he was parked on the day after. So on Monday, she was there again with her brother, and they were in the toy department again. And this time, they were watching Adam play a game, and she saw Dahmer whispering to Adam and taking him by the fingertips and walking off with him. And that's when their mother picked him up and they left. So she also, like I said, saw Dahmer leaning over Adam and taking him by the hand and walking out. And as he walked out, he passed another aisle where another witness says he saw Dahmer with Adam. His name is, he's a young black kid, 9 years old. And he was actually playing the video game with Adam before he went to the other aisle. What happened was Vernon Jones and his father, Otis Toole, 1T, took Vernon to the Sears because he wanted to go buy some tools, which was right next to the toy department. And while he was looking at some tools, he left Vernon in the toy department. Vernon was playing a video game in a toy baseball game with Adam. And he says there was this guy, this white male, disheveled, standing about 15 feet away, hissing at him. He was going, psst, psst, hey, come here, to Vernon. And Vernon looks up at this guy and he's thinking, man, I'm not going with you, to himself. And all of a sudden he heard a big crack. And he turns around and he looks back and it was Adam. He got a grand slam home run. And he's standing there with this big grin on the face because he just beat the 9-year-old kid and he's only 6. So Vernon said he got so upset, he went around the other aisle on the other side and started playing Donkey Kong by himself. And then he saw this guy a little bit later walking past that aisle with Adam. But being 9 years old, he didn't really think a whole lot of it until that night. Right. When they were home, he was in the bedroom and his grandmother called him into the living room and said, hey, Vernon, get in here. You were in the toy department. Did you see this kid? And he turns to his grandfather and he goes, Grandpa, that's the boy I was playing the video game with. So his grandfather, Otis Toole, the next morning takes him to the police department. And there was this big, heavyset white police officer standing there by the entrance. And he was chewing tobacco. And his grandfather goes up to him and explains to him that he's there about that case, the incident. And this white police officer turns to his grandfather and spits a wad of tobacco on his grandfather's shoe and says, boy, I ain't got time for you. And Vernon says he couldn't, at 9 years old, he couldn't understand why this police officer, who was so much younger than his grandfather, was calling him boy, because he didn't understand racism at 9 years old. But after that incident, their parents got him into karate to defend himself.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so he grew up learning karate, and he ended up getting a black belt and opening up his own karate school.
Good for him.
And he's traveled all across the United States talking to other police departments and other venues, explaining about his encounter that day. And he says,
go ahead.
Everybody, he's talked to police departments everywhere in the country, hundreds of them. And the Hollywood Police Department still, to this day, refuses to interview him. They won't even interview him. He even wrote a letter when he grew up, when he was in his 20s. He wrote a letter to John Walsh, and that letter is in my book. It's the most heartfelt letter you could read, explaining how bad he feels about what happened. And he was only 9 years old. He was too young to understand. And John Walsh took that letter and sent it to the Hollywood Police Department and said, hey, I want you to go interview this guy. They've never called him to this day.
Wow.
They used to call, talk to him. And there's other witnesses too that we.
A lot. It was a lot of witnesses.
A
It's a
lot.
shame.
I would say there's a
A
Yankee
lot.
Stadium full of witnesses. Real little, almost
Neva said, was that for money or did he make that up?
what? What are you
I
talking
don't
about?
know what
Money?
she's talking about. I don't know. What are you talking about, Neva? What was for money? Let's go to her next question. Were they not believed because they were aesthetic?
Huh?
Right here. Can you see it? The
No.
question?
Oh,
It's on the screen.
yeah, I know. Well, who are you talking about? I have to scroll down.
She's saying,
Is that the
yeah,
last question? Where's the question at?
right here. Were they not believed because they were, oh, she's talking about Joe's story about the granddaughter.
Whose granddaughter? The niece? Out of school's
Yeah,
niece?
yeah.
So what's the question?
So I think what she was saying was the question goes back to here. Was that for money or did they make that up?
She has to be more specific because it's hard to answer a question when she says that and they.
She's talking about Joe's granddaughter when she said that.
There's no granddaughter with Joe. What granddaughter is she talking about?
Make it more specific, Neva, because I believe you said that he got a phone call. Somebody had called and
Sarah
said
Patterson. That's Otterstool's niece.
Auditu's niece. Yes, not the granddaughter. Sorry.
No, that was just totally made up.
Yeah, so it was made up. She was saying, was that for money or yeah, was it made up? No,
Made
it
up.
was made up.
Yeah. But what happened was, in the case was closed in 2008. So a year before they closed the case, Reve Walsh wanted the case closed in a conclusive way. So they contacted Joe Matthews and asked him if he would reinvestigate the case. And that's when he made up that report called the Matthews Report, pinning this on Otter's tool. I mean, the murder of Adam. And
Okay.
he may have done it just to placate the Walshes, you know? So
Mhm.
whatever his reason was, whatever his motives are, to me, it's irrelevant. But
Yeah.
it has to be deliberate. When you don't call the witnesses and their names are clearly in the case files and you don't contact any of them, there has to be some motive behind not doing that.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree because there was too many witnesses, and for them not to just
It's not,
investigate or
yeah, and it's not them, it's just
that's
him.
crazy.
Yeah. So what he did was he made up this report, and after the case was closed, that report called the Matthews report, should have been part of the case files because they used it to close the case. And that's why I sued them. But Matthews, in his book, here, boom, right there again, says he made that report up because he wanted it to be used by police departments across the country as a manuscript on how to solve a cold case, right?
Hmm.
But yet, once I started asking for that report, all of a sudden it was unavailable to anybody. Nobody would show a copy of it. So this is the closest thing we have is his book. That's the closest thing we have here, because he took that report after the case was closed and gave it to his co-author, and asked the co-author to reconstruct it and formulate it into a book, and that's how that book came about, Bringing Adam Home.
And this is the part where Kimberly wants to know why is there so many people writing books seemingly for financial gain rather than justice?
Well, when Dahmer was first captured, a lot of books came out, like the Milwaukee Cannibal and on, because people like to write books when a case is fresh in the news, because that's when that will get the most sales, right? But no, my goal has never been anything financial, you know. It's always been just to get the truth out there. You know, I pay for my websites. I don't charge anything. You can go watch them, you know. So anything you want on them, you can look it through the case records. So, but right now, my book is not even available on Amazon. They say it's temporarily out of stock.
Right.
I'm waiting for them to get some more books in, because the one I would like, if anybody wants to buy one, I would like them to buy this copy, and as soon as it comes back up on sale, this is the hardcover, expanded edition. Make sure it says right there, expanded edition.
And that.
Okay, right there, because that's the latest book. And this book here, right here, if you look in it, right here, I have QR codes. If you can see them right there, see it?
Mm-hmm.
Those are my websites. So you get to see the website, scan those codes, and you can go right to the websites, frustratedwitness.com and justiceforadam.com. Because this book works in conjunction with those websites. Because, like I said, like with Sarah Patterson, you know, when I talk about what Joe Matthews says about the deathbed confession,
Right.
I reference the case files where you can go directly to the file, the folder, the box. You know, I mentioned the box you got to go to, the folder you got to go to, and the page on that in that file to go to read what Sarah Patterson really said. So throughout the book, I reference the pages on the case files where you can actually check for yourself, because I'm not making anything up. Then you can read this book up.
Right.
Everything is made up, you know. And then also I put QR codes throughout the book of those witnesses, like Mia Taylor, so you can hear directly from her mouth what she has to say, because we've done radio shows and podcasts as well.
Right. I've heard one of them. We've actually played one yesterday.
Right, right. So you can hear from them. So you can see that
Mhm.
they're not making things up either.
Right.
And why is it this guy that pinned this on out of stool? You know, why is it he hasn't talked to her or any of these other witnesses? And he even says, you know, she denies the things that he says. For instance, remember I told you how he uses people that have passed away and said things?
Right.
Well, remember I told you about Joel, her brother, Dahmer almost tried to abduct him the day before Adam?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, in Joel's book, right here, again, he says Adam, Matthew's book, he says Joel called him on America's Most Wanted and says he was one of the boys that was kicked out of the store by the security guard. This is what Matthew says. But I finally contacted Mia Taylor up, and I asked her, and she says, that never happened. She was with her brother, as I told you earlier. He was never put out. So who are you going to believe, Mia or this idiot Joe Matthews?
Right.
You know, this is what he does. So, yeah.
Was you a little afraid when you found out? Like, how did you feel when you found out you ran into a serial killer?
I didn't know it. I had no clue he was a serial killer. He wasn't
But
even a
when you
serial
found
killer.
out,
In the,
yeah, later on, like, how did you feel? Like, how did that make you
1991,
feel?
I told you when I saw that mugshot in the paper, I started freaking out. You
Ooh.
know, I'm reading about this guy that killed all these people and chopped them up and ate some of them, whatever he did. And I'm looking at that mugshot and thinking, this is the guy. This is the guy I saw in the mall. This guy that came up to me, he was trying to start a conversation. And then I later on I would read, that's what he would do. You know, Tracy Edwards, the guy that got away from him, right? That's where he met him in a mall. He approached him in a similar way he approached me. The only difference, Tracy made a mistake. He went with him. You know, he spent 4 hours of horror in that apartment before he escaped. You know the story, right? I'm sure most people know the story. They were watching a movie, The Exorcist, and Dahmer had him handcuffed. Had by one handcuff on, and he was on the bed. Dahmer had a knife on him in his groin, and then he opens up a file cabinet right next to the bed, and he pulls his skull out. And he's rubbing it. He's telling Tracy that, you're going to look better than this guy when I'm done. Yeah, and
Sick.
then he's telling him he's going to eat his heart. So you can imagine what an experience that would have been for Tracy. That would before he finally got away.
Did you ever think like, wow, that could have been me?
No, because I don't think it ever would have been me. See, like I said, Tracy, he offered Tracy to go home with him, and Tracy accepted to go to a party or something, whatever it was he said to Tracy. I would have never gone with that guy. Like I said, I didn't even respond to him.
Right. You just, yeah.
I
Right.
ignored him. Tracy apparently started a conversation with him and went with him back to his apartment. And he did
Right.
have an apartment in 81. Maybe that's what he was trying to do to me. Maybe he wanted me to go back to his apartment. He had an apartment. So,
Because later on, you ran into him again.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's
but
kind of weird. You know what I mean? Like, was he
yeah.
watching you?
No, I don't think he was
You
watching.
don't think so?
No,
Yeah.
I had no idea who I was.
Weird.
He just met me for like that encounter might have been, it seemed like an eternity, but it probably was just in real time, just a matter of
Yeah.
minutes. That's all it
It's
was.
creepy.
And he
Creepy.
realized it wasn't going anywhere. I wasn't going to respond. So
Right.
he stomped out of the Radio Shack like he was trying to punch holes through the floor. You could see he was really upset. So he didn't like me rebuffing him, apparently. So, and he took it out on Adam. Adam was just an easy mark, you know? I don't think he was necessarily searching for a 6-year-old boy. It just happened, you know? And I believe there have been many encounters with Dahmer that weren't successful. People getting into the blue van hitchhiking and he picked them up. Because the coroner's office, during that time Dahmer was living here, there were numerous bodies found, brutally beat up.
Mm.
And yeah, so I believe they could have been victims of Dahmer's too. I mean, there's no way to prove that. But I know he was wandering around, like I said, the second time with the blue van when he approached me. So obviously he's trolling the streets. And back then in the 80s, especially down here in Florida, because you get a lot of runaways from up north. And where do they
Mm.
come? They come to Florida for some reason. This is a big attraction down here. Runaways come down here, and they're hitchhiking. It was very common back then in the 80s to see hitchhikers. You know, so
If you could say something to John Walsh, what would you say to him today?
I really don't have an interest in saying anything to him. I really don't. You know, well, I wouldn't know what to say. He wants to stay stuck on a false closure. That's on him. So
Are you gonna write another book?
no, I'm done. I'm done. I'm
Why?
exhausted. You see. Look at that book. You see how much work I put into it. I wrote that.
He has written so many books.
You weren't even born when I started writing that. How old are you? You know what I say?
45.
Okay, so you were just in diapers. I was 43 years old. Well, you're just getting out of diapers. You just started walking. I don't know. Whatever. But yeah,
I
no.
was born 1979.
Yeah. Okay. And this was 1981. So,
Mm.
and even at 2 years old, you weren't watching the news. No 2-year-old watching.
No,
So you wouldn't have known, even if though you
nah,
were here, you wouldn't have known anything about this case,
no way.
until you grew up. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, he is funny, Neva. He's a pretty cool guy.
Yeah. So
He's a good guy.
have you watched America's Most Wanted?
Yeah, America's Most Wanted?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I found out about his son and everything. Yeah.
Do you know it's back?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been
with
back
with his son.
with his son Callahan.
With
Yeah,
his son.
yeah. You watched it since it's been back?
A few episodes I have,
Have you?
yes.
Oh, you got
A
me
few
beat. I
episodes.
only watched
Not
the
many.
yeah. I only watched once, and I have no interest in watching it.
I prefer the old back in the days ones.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, America's Smoke, but a few episodes. I was
yeah,
surprised when I seen him with his son. I
yeah,
said, okay, wow. Yeah, the new series. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. And he had a couple other shows on too before that. What In Pursuit, I think was one of them.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, because actually one of the cases we've talked about on here, which was Jelani Day, his mother was on there. They
Right.
were doing that case.
I've
What okay.
no, I've actually been to Rebbe Walsh's house. I
Oh,
went there to give her a copy of my book, but you can't get it on the property because they have like a fence around the property that's got to be 8 feet tall,
right.
8 feet high. So what I did was I put them in plastic bags. I left two of them. I tied it to the fence, and I left one tied to the mailbox out that was on the outside of the fence. So I've never heard from her, and I've tried to contact Callahan, Hayden, the two sons, and John himself, and Rive and Megan, and for all my effort, this was on Facebook. I sent messages on Facebook
Right.
explaining who I was and all that. And for my effort, I was blocked from their pages.
Oh.
Yeah. So,
Have you donated any of the money to the John Wash, Adam Wash?
what money am I supposed to donate? I have never
No,
made.
I'm just asking, have you donated anything from your books and stuff?
Yeah, I gave Rive two copies of my book. My attorney mailed John Walsh a copy of my book. So but no response. They never respond.
No, because I know they have a don't they have like some type of thing for their son for Adam Wash?
Yeah,
Like a what do you call those? Um non-pro not like a profit
yeah, I know.
organization going on.
Yeah. I've written to
Right.
some of them. I've written to
Yeah.
some of them. They never
Yeah,
respond to me either. So
I was asking you, have you donated anything from your profit of your book
they
to
won't
the
even. There's no profit on this book.
or any money from the book?
Thousands and thousands of dollars. Okay.
I know you told me.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, there's no profit. Like I said, that mitochondrial DNA that test that I did, it cost me hundreds of dollars to do. I took a polygraph exam because one time I got an interview with the Hollywood Police Department finally, and
Mhm.
all they did was threaten me with arrest if I ever go back there again. So I
Wow.
went up, huh?
Wow. I said, wow.
Yeah, well, because during that interview, I was explaining what happened, that I was at the Hollywood Mall, and one of the detectives, his name is Lyle Bean, Detective Lyle Bean. He jumps up, flailing his arms about, and he's going, "For all I know, you could have done it. You just admitted you were there. You want me to arrest you? Get up. I could arrest you." And then he backs up, folds his arms like a tough guy. You know that fold like a tough guy, like you do, like this.
Yeah.
So he folds his arms like this, and he says, "So, you think you'll ever come back here again?" Like that. And here I am, a witness, and this is how he's treating me. So I, I during that interview, I offered, because he told me that he thinks I'm making it up and lying. He says, "How do we know you were even there?" You know. And I says, "Well, because I've been telling everybody at work ever since this happened. So if you think I'm making it up now, I would have had to been making it up since 1981. And I can give you a list of phone numbers to call, of coworkers."
Right.
And so he started calling me a liar and saying, "I know that mall better than anybody. And you could have been
Mhm.
at this point when you say you were at that point," and all this crap they're telling me. And so after they started calling me a liar, I went out and paid for my own polygraph test. Okay, and that cost me $650 too, right there. So, and this is not $650 in today's money. This was like
Back
like
then.
2007 and 2005, something like that. But it was a lot of money back then.
Right.
And I felt that strong about it to go take my polygraph test, and I have a copy of that exam, the test in my book. You can read it. I passed it with flying colors because I knew I wasn't making it up. Even
Right.
the polygraph examiner, he had some not so nice things to say about the Hollywood Police Department.
Mm.
So
Mm. Can imagine.
yeah. All
Wow.
right. So how did I do?
I want to thank you so much for giving
Uh,
me the opportunity to have you on my platform to discuss,
can
the
Can
whole
you do me
case and
a
what
favor?
happened, the whole story,
Can you do
you
me a
know?
favor?
Yes.
Take a quick poll on your guests. See if they think I passing this polygraph exam. They think I'm telling the truth. Let's see who says that. Let's see what they have to say.
Okay, everybody, whoever else is in here, can you give a thumbs up if you believe his story? Well, I definitely,
Yeah.
how I feel about
Or do you believe this garbage? Boom. This is another book. If you want to read this book, you can read this book. This is Jeffrey Dahmer's father. He wrote this book. It's called A Father's Story about growing up, raising Jeffrey Dahmer. And I'll give
it.
you another book to read.
Neva said, I believe.
Okay.
That's
Read this
one.
book. Read this book. This is a book. It's written by Soper Princewell. He's the manager of the
Prime
building.
target.
Yeah, this guy's the manager of the building where Jeffrey Dahmer lived. Okay, he's the one that wrote the lease up for Dahmer and all of that. And he used to always go to Dahmer's apartment to check on the stink complaints. And that's why he called it the prime target, because he believes he was a prime target. Dahmer was trying to kill him as well.
Jesus. He was a monster.
Yeah. And
Straight
the
monster.
reason he says that is because Dahmer came to his apartment a couple of times with some beer, offered him beer, and he believes it might have been spiked or something. But he somebody showed up, and then Dahmer took off. So he thinks that he was a prime target because there was another person that was murdered in the same building Dahmer was living in, and the Milwaukee police don't want to connect Dahmer to that murder either. So they're doing the same thing the Hollywood Police Department does, covering up murders. Dahmer's been charged with 17 murders, but there's obviously more that they don't want to make connections to.
He's definitely a monster. That's for sure.
Dean Vaughn was murdered in his apartment on the third floor, and Dahmer was living on the second floor, 213. And when Dahmer was finally captured, Dean Vaughn's murder was an ongoing investigation. He was murdered about 4 months before Dahmer was captured, and he was found in his room with his pants pulled down to his ankle, face down, and he was intoxicated and strangled and sodomized, which is Dahmer's MO. Would you agree with that?
I just put the link down below for your book
Yeah.
from Amazon.
I was asking you a question.
I'm sorry. Say that again, please.
Dean Vaughn was found in his room with his pants down to his ankles, face down on his bed. He was when they did the exam, the autopsy. He was found to be intoxicated, sodomized, and strangled.
Who was?
Dean Vaughn in the same building where Dahmer was living. You don't
Oh,
understand anything I was saying. Listen, here's what happened. This was 4 months before Dahmer was captured. Tracy Edwards, when he escaped and Dahmer got captured. So Dean Vaughn was an ongoing murder investigation. And the police, when they were investigating Dean's murder, they knew it had to be somebody within the 49 apartments in the Oxford building, because that building had a locked door. The only way you can get in is if you had a key or if you use the intercom system to call somebody, and they would have to come down and let you in.
Let you upstairs.
Or a lot of times what they would do is they would call Soper in his office and ask him to open the door, and let somebody in. So that's the only way you can get in. So they knew it had to be somebody within the building, and they went and interviewed everybody in that building, including the only white guy, Jeffrey Dahmer. And Dahmer says he don't know anything about it, and anyway, so I contacted the woman that lived across the hall from Dahmer. Her name is Pamela Bass. And she says that she saw Dean and Dahmer together the night that he was found murdered. The night he was murdered, she saw Dahmer going up to his room with him. And yet the police still don't want to make Dahmer a connection because, my opinion again, they're afraid to make this another victim, because this was an ongoing murder investigation at a time when they were giving people back to Dahmer, like that little kid that escaped, the Connor X synthesis phone. Remember the 14-year-old Laotian kid?
Yes.
Escaped, and two black girls found him in the street, butt naked. They called 911. The police show up, and the fire department shows up, and they're taking care of the kid. The police, they tell the fire department to take off. Jeffrey Dahmer shows up and tells the police that that's his 19-year-old lover. And they gave this little kid back to Dahmer, and these girls are screaming at the police saying, look at him, he's not 19, And the kid was incoherent. They gave him back. Dahmer immediately murdered him, boiled his head. And so when Dahmer was finally captured, the minority community, the black community, because this was a black community that he was living in, and the gay community, because most of the murders were gay males that he picked up in gay bars, they were all out in large numbers protesting in the streets, and they were afraid there might be riots, apparently. So they did not want to make any more connections than the ones they had to make, which were the ones in his apartment. You can't disconnect a chopped up body in his apartment and say, no, this is not related, right?
Yeah, that basically.
Basically, yeah. Right. You find 7 heads in the refrigerator. You can say, oh, this is not related to Dahmer. No, it's related. So they had to, those 17, they had to say were his victims. Yeah. But anything where they can not make the association, that's what they apparently did. And Dean Vaughn's one of them. They did not want to make the connection. So they would come to this day. You can go in the Milwaukee cold case files, and you'll see Dean Vaughn still sitting there. And I think they changed the post, but I put a copy of it when I got it. It says, if anybody knows any information about this murder, please call the Milwaukee Police Department and help us solve this case. You think they really want to solve it? They've been covering up on it. So they do the same thing like Miami. Like I said, when you mess up, never fess up. That's what they do.
I couldn't believe when I saw them give that boy right back to Donald, whatever his name is.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember that part. Yeah. Wow. The police really messed up. Kimberly said, I gave you 100. I gave him 100.
Yeah. But here's the deal.
Katie said thumbs up.
Our community was so upset because these police took the word over the white guy, Jeffrey Dahmer, over these 2 black girls, who were 17. One was 17 and one was 18. And they even threatened them with arrest if they didn't take off. What they told them, says, listen, get out of here. we're taking care of this. If you don't leave, we're taking you downtown, which means an arrest. They don't take you downtown, for a goodwill trip.
I'm gonna have to watch that movie because I didn't watch all of the movie.
Which one? Netflix?
Yeah, the
You don't
Jeffrey
watch that?
Dahmer thing. I didn't watch all of it.
Oh, you don't
Neva
watch.
said, and
Don't
the
watch any
police
of
joked
it. It's
about it.
garbage. It's all garbage. Don't watch any of it.
Uh, Neva said, and the police joked about it.
Yeah, yeah.
The fuck?
Oh yeah, yeah. They were joking about it. Even as they returned the kid to Dharma, they were joking about it. So
Oh my god! Come on now.
yeah, they were laughing about it and joking about it, and then the police officers eventually ended up getting promoted. But when that first happened, they were fired, but they hired them back after things calmed down, which is what they do a lot.
Wonder why.
Yeah, and they do the same thing down here. There was cases similar, where police get fired and they try to hire them back, and they cover up. They investigate themselves, and they find no wrongdoing. So
Neva said they said gay lover spat. Ooh.
which one is that?
But that's what the cops had said. They was, making fun of them saying gay lover spat.
Oh, yeah.
Ah,
Yeah, that was what
police
the 14-year-old kid. They called it a gay lover spat because Dahmer said he was 19, when it's so obvious. They never even tried to figure out, And if they would have even made a phone call to check Dahmer was already on parole because he was serving prison time at that time.
They
he was on a work release program.
They didn't run his name or nothing.
They didn't run his name. They would have found out he was on parole. You know what for? For being a pedophile.
Oh!
Yeah. So he was on parole for that. So they would have caught him already. And since they gave that kid back to Dahmer, there were 4 more murders. So all those murders would have been prevented.
They messed up.
Yeah. So Mommy and Walsh are like 2 peas in a pod. These 2 police departments. They're both horrible.
I would have sued the hell out of them.
Oh, there were a lot of lawsuits. The Connex family sued. Obviously, a lot of those victims sued.
Wow.
So
they didn't look him up, do nothing. Just go ahead, take him. He's yours.
Exactly.
Go ahead, chop him and eat him up.
Yeah.
Fucking shame. It's a shame.
Just take his word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We won't hold you no longer.
All right,
Willis. I'm going to talk to you later, though. Well, no, tomorrow. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
All right. Well, I enjoy spending the time with you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you. And so far, they said 100.
Oh, thank you, guys.
Yes. Yeah. Please go subscribe. Go ahead.
If anybody wants to do me a favor to help, like I said, I don't ask for money, but what would really help is to learn a little bit about this case and give an Amazon review. I need Amazon reviews, especially verified purchase reviews. That means you have to actually buy the book.
Right.
So if you can afford it, if you can get it, I appreciate it, just so I can get an Amazon review.
Right.
Purchase verified review.
And
you can explain to them exactly what a verified purchase review is versus just a regular review.
Yeah, like I made that mistake.
You just made a mistake of buying the wrong book. But if you ordered the right book, when you get it, you give you give a review. It'll say that you're a verified purchaser of the book.
Right. And it will say, this don't have it, but expand. What is it again?
Expanded edition. Make sure it says
expanded edition.
There's also the second edition. Don't get the second edition. Get the expanded edition.
Matter of fact, when you look at the thumbnail, I posted all his books on, like some of the books on
Right,
there and stuff. But please go, and the link is right there to his book from Amazon. That's what I was doing when you was asking me a question. I
right.
was going on your Amazon, posting the link so they could get to it. So please go check that out. Thank you. Everybody said this was an excellent interview.
Do
Thank you
me a
so
favor.
much.
Change that photo. It's
Which
a horrible.
photo?
I hate that photo. The
You don't
photo,
like that photo? I
thumbnail
love that.
photo. No, the thumbnail photo with me holding that book up. Get rid of that.
I think it's so
No,
adorable.
no, change it. Everybody says you look so sad in
I
that
had to
photo.
get something different because everybody else got the other one, so I had to get something different.
Well,
Okay.
put the one of me in my office back when I was working.
Listen, everybody. Subscribe to his YouTube channel. It is there. Go check it out. And also go to his Facebook. He has Facebook also. I put all his links right there. Please go support him. Please, please, please. He will very appreciate it. He don't ask for much at all. Please buy the book, go support him, and know about this case. Because I'm pretty sure there's much more. We will bring him back. You want to say anything?
Bye.
Peace, y'all.
Ciao.
Ciao. Good night, everybody. Thank you so much.